You've probably heard it before, maybe more than once. You're too intense, too emotional, too honest, too demanding, too much. And, over time, those words don't just sting. They start shaping how you see yourself. You begin to shrink. You second-guess your instincts. You silence parts of yourself just to keep the peace. But what if that label was never about you being too much? What if it was about what you bring out in others? Because here's the truth most people don't want to confront. You're not too much. You're just triggering what others have avoided dealing with inside themselves. The reason your presence activates discomfort in others. When you express yourself openly, when you set boundaries, when you ask for clarity or depth, you create pressure. Not intentional pressure, but emotional pressure. And that pressure forces people to confront things they've been avoiding. Someone who avoids vulnerability will feel exposed around someone who communicates deeply. Someone who struggles with insecurity will feel threatened by someone who knows their worth. Someone who suppresses emotion will feel overwhelmed by someone who expresses it freely. It's not that you're doing something wrong, it's that you're holding up a mirror. And honestly, most people are not ready to look into that mirror. Why people label you instead of looking inward? It's easier to call you too much than to admit they feel inadequate, uncomfortable, or emotionally unprepared. Labeling you protects their ego. It allows them to avoid growth. If they convince themselves that you're the problem, they never have to question themselves. This is how emotional avoidance works. Instead of asking, "Why does this bother me?" they say, "You're the problem." Over time, if you're not careful, you start believing it. You begin editing yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your full expression. It starts off slowly, how you begin to shrink yourself to avoid rejection. You stop saying what you really feel, maybe just to keep the peace. You tone down your excitement, hold back your thoughts, and bit by bit you become more acceptable, more manageable, more, digestible. On the surface, it might look like things are improving. There's less conflict, fewer misunderstandings. But honestly, inside, something starts to erode. You feel disconnected from yourself, and even when you're surrounded by people, you feel unseen. That's because the version of you they accept isn't the real you. And that's the cost of trying not to be too much. There's a real difference between emotional depth and emotional overwhelm, and I think it's important to point that out. Let's be clear, being emotionally aware isn't the same as being emotionally reactive. Being called too much is often just a misunderstanding of depth. Depth means you feel things, you think deeply, you ask questions, and you seek meaning. Overwhelm, though, comes from unprocessed emotions just spilling out everywhere, uncontrollably. If you're willing to reflect, regulate, and take responsibility for your emotions, then your depth isn't the problem. In fact, it's a strength. But to someone who avoids depth altogether, even healthy emotional expression can feel like too much. The truth is, the right people won't see you as too much. They don't feel overwhelmed by your presence. Actually, they feel expanded by it. They don't ask you to shrink. They meet you where you are, or even grow toward you. They don't label your honesty as intensity or your boundaries as aggression. Instead, they recognize it as clarity. And honestly, this is where a lot of folks get stuck. They think the solution is to change themselves, when really the solution is to change the environment and the people they allow close. Because, compatibility isn't about who can tolerate you. It's about who can truly understand you. How do you tell when you're being authentic versus reactive? Well, this really requires a bit of honesty with yourself. Ask yourself some simple but direct questions. Are you expressing your truth, or are you reacting from an old wound? Are you communicating to connect, or, just to control? Are you grounded in your emotions, or are you sort of consumed by them? Self-awareness, that's what separates growth from chaos. Being authentic doesn't mean saying everything that comes to mind without a filter. It means understanding what you feel, why you feel it, and expressing it in a way that actually aligns with your values. When you reach that level, you just stop questioning whether you're too much. So, here are some practical ways to stop shrinking and actually stand in your full self. Start by noticing where you hold back. In conversations, in relationships, in decisions. Pay attention to those moments where you silence yourself out of fear of being, too much. Then, just take small steps toward expressing yourself anyway. Maybe speak one honest sentence you'd normally suppress. Set one boundary you've been avoiding. Share one thought you'd usually keep to yourself. Growth doesn't happen through dramatic change. It happens through consistent, uncomfortable honesty. And also pay attention to how people respond. Not everyone deserves access to your full self. If someone consistently makes you feel like you need to shrink, that's information, not about your worth, but about their capacity. There's a real freedom that comes when you stop apologizing for your depth. There's a shift that happens when you stop trying to be easier to handle. You stop chasing approval. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop diluting your personality just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. And in that space, something powerful emerges. Confidence. Not loud confidence, but grounded confidence. The kind that doesn't need validation. You realize that being misunderstood is actually better than being invisible. Because at least when you're misunderstood, you're still being yourself. The truth is, you were never too much. You were just in spaces that couldn't hold you, around people who weren't ready for you, in environments that required you to shrink just to belong. And once you see that clearly, you stop trying to fix yourself for people who were never meant to understand you in the first place. If this hits something real for you, don't ignore it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more content that challenges how you think and helps you understand yourself on a deeper level, make sure you subscribe and stay connected.